Thank you, and good morning. My name is Madeline, and I am currently the chair of the board. And today we're going to have a lot of themes about journeys and transitions. And so by the end of today, my friend Bhupesh over here will be chair of the board, and so the baton will have been passed. So when you hear the theme of journey and transition, today is a big one, and it has been an honor and a privilege to serve as the chair of the board of FINOS over the last year. So Gab asked me to talk a little bit about my journey and my journey at FINOS, and kind of start this theme of we are in the process of going through a lot of change and evolution, and we're at a really interesting juncture in the maturity curve of FINOS. So I got a call from Brad Levy, who's the CEO of Symphony, in 2021. And I knew him because he was an industry guy and he worked at Market. And he didn't call me that much, so when he called and he said, "Can you go to this meeting for me?" I went, because that's how financial services relationships work. If you know someone and you have a good relationship with them and they ask you to do them a favor, you try to do your best. So I went to this meeting. It was the first buy-side FINOS meeting. It was okay. It wasn't awesome. But it piqued my interest enough to decide to go to OSSF New York that year. And so my colleague Marta and I, who was from the trading group, went to New York, and we decided to attend the conference and then check it out a little bit with a bunch of our contacts in the industry to see whether it was legit. Because I'll tell you, the first conference was much smaller than this, and it was kind of like in a basement of a movie theater or something. It was really gross. And when you come from Wall Street and finance, it's a little sus when you're in kind of like this black theater hole thing. So we were a little bit disconcerted by that. And I must say the London crowd is much better dressed than the New York crowd was at that time. It was post-COVID. We were in the basement of a movie theater. There were a lot of people who looked like they'd been coding all night and hadn't changed their clothes. So anyway, despite that, which actually, upon reflection, probably indicates that we thought they were real coders, because that's what real coders look like. So we visited some brokers. We went to Citibank and Morgan Stanley and Goldman and Merrill, I think. I can't remember. And we said, "Is this thing for real?" And we talked to some of the business leaders to see whether they knew their tech counterparts and what they thought. And that's when I met Dov Katz, actually, because he was brought in to Morgan Stanley to sort of help explain what FINOS was. So the highlight there is a lot of relationships, right? People work across all these different firms across the whole world. And it's this bond of these relationships and the connections and the shared problems that people have that bring us together to collaborate under the FINOS umbrella. So we joined Wellington. I was the CIO at Wellington at the time. We joined because we believe that technology should be done differently and better in financial services, and we joined as Platinum because we wanted to have a voice. And we have a history of helping move the industry, so if we're going to get involved, we're kind of all full in. So over the next couple of years, we did hackathons, and we did all kinds of things. We did trainings. We put our first piece of code into open source, where we actually contributed it. That was very exciting. Tim Jenkel did that. We put in a production link over FDC3 between Wellington and Morgan Stanley. That was also a big first. And then little by little, I got just more involved on the board, and there was a big push for getting more buy-sides, and obviously buy-sides no buy-sides, so I was doing some calls. And Gab here, he likes to get as much out of everyone to contribute in the FINOS world as possible. So I got a lot of calls and asks, and we at Wellington always try to be helpful and say yes to the industry. So eventually I became chair. And then last year, I was greatly honored to be asked to be, to go from vice chair to chair. So in the meantime, BlackRock, Fidelity, State Street, big buy-side growth. And then in the last year, the number of new constituency that have joined FINOS. So it started with the banks, the buy sides grew, now we have exchanges, we have DTCC, we have market data providers, lots of fintechs, obviously. But very exciting is the cloud service providers have joined, and they all have verticals that look at financial services, and as it turns out, that parts of their firms work very closely with many of the firms in financial services, and being able to bring that together at scale so that they can have a conversation with a whole bunch of people in financial services about tech under one umbrella instead of having to go one firm at a time is a huge impact and positive that we can have. So on that note, Microsoft, together with GitHub's been involved in a long-standing support of FINOS, have upped their commitment. They're going to be the first cloud service provider to be on the board as platinum members. So very excited for that. Huge thank you to Microsoft. I want to personally welcome Allison. And we look forward to the collaboration on projects like common cloud controls and AI governance. For us to be able to use these technologies to innovate, we need to be able to solve as an industry across financial services, and those partnerships are going to be critical. So very excited for that. So welcome to our new global members. You can see their names on the board here. We have a bunch of new members from Asia, which is very exciting. We've dipped our toes, and there's a lot of interest actually coming from Asia into FINOS as opposed to us pushing out. And I think that really indicates that all the global relationships are working, and so it's getting out into the world that people should be engaging with FINOS. So that's very exciting. Well, we also have Bank of America and Commonwealth. So there's still a couple of banks joining. So welcome to all the new members of the community. And this here is the full slide. We've hit the amazing milestone in 2025 of surpassing 100 corporate members across all the tiers. And just to give you a sense, 3 years ago was half this number. So there is definitely a wind of change and interest going on. So all that being said, membership is really important because A, creates funding for the organization. FINOS is a crowdsourced part of the Linux Foundation. And so we need membership so that the team can actually run and then help us collaborate together and get all the work done. So our project landscape is really strong and continuing to grow. And one of the big highlights from this year is hackathons. So there were a whole bunch of hackathons. FINOS has been partnering with firms like DTCC and Citi to set up hackathons. They've turned out being huge. They're great because people contribute to the open source projects and also learn how to do it and make relationships. And we've had 1,650 participants in hackathons since last fall. So that's a pretty astounding number. So thank you to the hackathon organizers, and thank you to all of you who participated. Okay, so in the arc of things that go on at FINOS, community is obviously at the core and underlying and a strong building block. Membership, projects getting started, code being donated. But at the end of all that, in order for financial services to really get the value out of all that work that we've been doing, we need to get code to production, and we need to make sure that it's better, faster, cheaper than it used to be to get that done. So you can see here some of the more mature projects. We've now gotten to the point where there's conformance and certification, and the standards can be adopted in a more formal way for things like FDC3 and CDM and Git proxy. So that's a huge step forward, and adoption is really, really critical for the long-term strength of open source in financial services. So if you are thinking about using some of these standards or tools, and you have an option to go the old way or go the new way, please do take a look, reach out, ask for help from your firm or another firm. It's really, really important that we get these technologies adopted so that the ROI is real. So the ROI being real brings us to a new mission. So one of the things that we did in the last year is basically contemplate the fact that FINOS has come so far. So look at the size of this room. When I started looking in 2021, we were in that movie theater in New York, in the basement. It was much smaller groups, OSSF London. I don't know if it even existed yet. It existed, but it was much, much smaller. It didn't exist. And COVID had happened. And interestingly, from an open source point of view, actually, I think a lot of the big code bases that first went in, COVID almost helped with that because people were, sort of all together joint in this difficult time. And that's actually a good thing from a collaboration point of view. But we've come a long way, and we started very much with a mission of allowing open source to be a thing in financial services, right? So open source readiness was the original mission of FINOS. And we wanted to rethink that and say, okay, it's not that it's done, but we've made a huge amount of progress, and the tools are there to enable it. So if a firm can't do it yet, there are plenty of tools. The open source readiness toolkit is built out. It's available to people. And a lot of the big firms are now at the point where they can do that. So what happens next? And we got a bunch of people together from the board. And I say a bunch of people because that could be any of you, right? If you contribute to the open source world and you're leading and you have a voice, you will find yourself brought in by these folks, by Jane and Gab, to contribute more and more and have leadership in a way that sometimes it's hard to have in your own firm. So we brought people together, and everybody pretty much said it's time for really making sure that we have an impact on the business and that we are, the word Gab likes to use is ubiquitous. I find that kind of hard to pronounce, but we are everywhere. And that that the code in FINOS and the standards in FINOS become core backbone to financial services. Right? That's things that you can't do financial services without. So here we have the new mission. You guys can read it. It reads very much like you would have a technology department's mission in a financial services firm. And that's very deliberate because in order for it to become sort of a fabric, each one of our firms exists. They all have technology work going on, and across all of that is FINOS, and the goals and agenda are fully aligned. So we want to, through collaborative open technologies and standards, enhance profitability, improve resilience, and accelerate innovation. So bold vision that we need to rally behind. So this is a call to action. I usually have everyone meet each other, but I was told that we can't do that today because there's not enough time. But you're off your phones mostly, so that's good. So pay attention to this, please. We really want to get to the point where the open source code is basically everywhere in everyone's systems by 2030. That's in 5 years. So that's a pretty aggressive goal. So that means everybody in this room and all of your firms and all of your friends and all of their friends need to start thinking about how do you leverage open source code to get it into your code base in production so that it's better, faster, cheaper, and you contribute back, but you get the value of everyone else's contributions as well. So very, very aggressive goal. It's all of us. This is a community. It's not just one group of people doing the work. Okay, some people got off their phones, so that's good. Okay, so what can you do? Learn as much as you can today about all the different projects out there. It starts with the SIGs and the projects. If you don't know what's going on, it's hard to use it. For those of us who are developers or business analysts, go in, try stuff, run it, figure out how it works in your environment, go into your firms and figure out what procedures you need to go through to actually make this real. Contributing code, always great. Every firm that starts to use a piece of code discovers they need one more thing. Contribute it back, that's what it's all about, and someone else will use it. And you're using something someone else contributed. So you have to have a little bit of altruism in the open source community and believe that if everyone's contributing, in aggregate, everyone's getting more value. And certainly, I think it's pretty straightforward that if everyone does the same thing over and over again separately, it's going to cost more money and it's going to be a hell of a lot less fun than if you actually bring it together and get the best ideas and build it together. And then fund. So there are probably some MDs in the room who have access to budgets. It's really, really important that the ecosystem stays strong and is maintained well over time, right? Because whether your piece of code gets dumped by a vendor or gets dumped by open source, it's the same problem, right? You want to make sure that it's well maintained and it's up to date and that you can rely on it and that new contributions are going in. And that means that the organization needs to be sustained. And that the membership needs to be sustained. So for those of you who have access to budgets, please consider funding. There are these special kind of funding areas for special projects that you can do, and then there's membership. Okay, so another thing that you can do right now on your phones, but only after I'm done talking. When Gab talks, you can get back on your phones. Please fill out the 2025 State of Open Source in Financial Services. It's really important data. It's really helpful to kind of know where we are in the arc of things when we've gone through these various moments where, you know, FINOS was kind of in its infancy, and then it became a toddler, and then it became a kid, and then it became I don't know, I think we're adolescents now. That's kind of what I would say. The data that we gather from here tells us how many firms are actually able to contribute to open source, how many firms are using the code bases, et cetera. It's very, very useful, particularly to try to get to real ROIs. And I will hand it back to Gab, and he will talk with an Italian accent, and he will hopefully not put you to sleep. Thank you very much.